May a love like this never find me. Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today I'm going to be doing a quick review of a new horror film called Obsession. The basic premise is, after breaking the mysterious One-Wish Willow to win his crush's heart, a hopeless romantic finds himself getting exactly what he asked for, but soon discovers that some desires come at a dark, sinister price. The first bit of this review is going to have less spoilers, and then we will do a full spoiler section afterwards. You are free to decide if and when you would like to click off if you are watching this video without having seen the film first. This is the feature film theatrical debut from screenwriter-director Curry Barker, whose previous horror film was a direct-to-YouTube release called Milk and Cereal, which was an hour long and made on a budget of $800. He's also made various short films. Regular viewers of my channel will have already heard me say this, but if you are new here, I will say that I tend to be more lenient in my judgments when looking at debut feature films because it's typically something made for less money, with less experience, and it's a starting point for filmmakers. I'm not only judging those debut films for what they are on their own, but also for the potential they demonstrate for what those filmmakers could grow into if given more opportunities in the future. In that regard, Obsession more than proves that Curry Barker is worth hiring for other horror films, and from a quick skim online, it shows that he already has other horror projects in the works. The scares are effective in a highly disturbing story, and Inde Navarrette's wildly expressive performance is what catapults the film into a higher tier of the horror genre. Now, having said that, I didn't end up enjoying the film as much as the more enthusiastic portion of the audience response I have observed when doing a quick skim while I was logging this film on my Letterboxd account. I'm not saying that those people are wrong. I understand why people would be impressed by this. Effectively explaining why I don't connect to this film as much as others will require getting into more of the spoilers, so the earlier context I would offer before then is that it's the type of horror film that I wouldn't recommend to viewers outside of those who are already fans of the horror genre, watch it more consistently, and are not squeamish about lots of things, really. It's a film that gets gross, there's violence and gore, but I found that the thing that disturbed me the most was the nature of the story itself. When you break down the mechanics of the story's premise, it's a man making a wish to have a woman be in love with him. He is supernaturally entrapping her, although, as you will have seen in the trailer, he doesn't know that this One-Wish Willow thing will work when he makes his wish. The ethics of him making the wish are not as dubious, but the way that the story continues to play out after he makes the wish, it made me deeply uncomfortable how she was being kept in a state of being that she did not choose to be in. I won't give away any specifics of what I'm talking about until we get into spoilers though, so stick around until then if you want to know more. First, I want to circle back to more of my praise for the film. The way that this is put together, it scares. I would describe it as being simple but highly effective. It could be things like her lingering in dark shadows, her moving in a way that appears unnatural, and in particular, as I said, the way that actress Inde Navarrette expresses the emotions of this character was impressive. She was doing the most acting out of everyone, and every time they would get to a scene or a situation that you could tell was going to set her up to do something different, something unusual, you just knew she was going to put on a show for the audience. If there is one reason to watch this film, it's her acting circles around everyone else. This disparity, though, could also be considered a weakness of the film, depending on your perspective. When the film begins, Bear, that's the protagonist who makes the wish, he is trying to figure out how to confess his feelings to Nikki, that's Inde Navarrette's character. I wouldn't say that the film takes too long in regards to the percentage of the runtime to have this wish happen and really jumpstart the story's momentum, but it felt like it took longer than it should have, and that was because of how bland Bear is. He lacked any ability to convey a distinct identity or characterization. The film felt like it was dragging when it was introducing us to him, and it didn't come alive until Nikki started acting weird post-Wish. Bear was so bland and unconvincing that I did not care about him whatsoever, which puts the narrative in a weird space because The film seems to be framing him as the character we follow and are supposed to be worried about the more that Nikki's unusual behavior begins to escalate, but I never cared about his well-being. I assumed things were going to continue to get worse for him, and I had no investment in whether or not things would work out for him in the end. As such, my feedback of the film is mixed, but overall, I would say that it's a well-made feature film debut for fans of the horror genre. Those are the folks I would most recommend this film to.
No, don't do that! I thought we were having a nice day!
We are.
Now we will be getting into full spoilers. One of the first things that happens that put me off of the protagonist, Bear, is that he comes home and finds that his cat is dead because the cat ingested some of Bear's prescription medication, and they use this death as a way of introducing Bear's numerous mental illnesses, or at least enough of a situation that results in him having a cabinet full of prescription medication, which he will eventually use to try to take his own life, to try to free himself from the situation, because he has been told that the only way the wish can end is if someone else does a wish that changes or counters the wish that he made, or if he, Bear, dies. This is something very specific to me as a viewer, but I don't like needless animal violence or animal death. Oftentimes when you are creating a work of fiction, I feel as though there are plenty of other ways to communicate what you want to without doing that. He has lots of prescription pills and struggles with his mental health, so the way I see it, you could have just as easily had him taking his medication as a means of introducing that he had these pills instead of using the death of a cat to do it. Moreover, they do a number of things with Nikki to show her escalating behavior, and they do 2 different horrific things involving this dead cat to show how, ooh, something's really wrong with Nikki. I don't like it twice, and that on its own would have been reason enough for me to be unlikely to ever recreationally rewatch this film again in the future, but the most significant disconnect that I had with the material is central to the story itself. Not to mention, Bear just never seemed emotionally upset enough for my liking for me to believe that he ever really, truly cared about this cat. When Bear makes this wish, Nikki's behavior immediately changes. She expresses non-platonic interest in him, but there are also strange things in her behavior, and as I said before, the film felt like it was finally coming alive because of Inde Navarrette's phenomenal transformative performance. However, maybe about a third or midway through the film, they began to reveal the fact that the real Nikki is somewhere still inside this supernatural creature that is more or less running around wearing Nikki's skin. They don't overly elaborate on whether this other being is a demon or some other type of creature, but at one point, the real Nikki tries to talk to Bear while the other being in control of Nikki's body is asleep. The real Nikki asks Bear to kill her. By this point, the possessed Nikki has done so many horrific, terrifying things, and when you recontextualize all of that, with the realization that the real Nikki has been held hostage for that entire time and been trapped inside her own body, possibly witnessing all of the things that possessed Nikki has been doing, it's nightmare fuel. And the thing that is most burned into my memory, the most horrific image that I now have to live with, is that there is a point somewhere in the middle of this film where Bear is on top of Nikki in his bed, and it's a jarring jump cut to this. I don't remember exactly what played out in the scene immediately before this, but he is on top of her doing you-know-what, and she is lying there completely unresponsive. Now, oftentimes in the film, possessed Nikki is the one who's being very pushy, demanding, erratic in her behavior and how she expresses her emotions. She's also very clingy towards Bear. But the fact that along the way they've revealed to the audience that the real Nikki is still in there somewhere, trapped, and she even tells Bear during that other late night encounter where she had asked him to kill her that she, the real Nikki, has never been with Bear, meaning that he's only ever been with this possessed version of Nikki. Overall, what this amounts to is feeling like you're watching a woman be held hostage by her so-called friend, who is forcing her to be his romantic partner, and the experience is nothing but torture for her. She would rather die than carry on as is. Why exactly would I prioritize recommending something like that as a work of entertainment? Beyond that, they make a point of repeatedly asking or suggesting the idea that Bear could or should let Nikki go, but he basically always refuses. things have to get way worse before he begins to make a real effort in finding a solution to this problem. Simply put, I don't like the framing of how, in a situation where a man is holding a woman hostage, we're being asked to empathize with him for how difficult it is for him because he's afraid of her, while we are being bombarded with horrific imagery that makes her appear to be monstrous, when nothing in this film was more repulsive to me than watching him assault her non-responsive body. That's what that was. There were other instances in the film where she is all over him, but she wasn't doing any of that during this scene. She was just laying there. I resent being presented with that footage, and I'm glad Bear doesn't survive in the end, but it didn't feel like a satisfactory or happy ending. Nikki regains control of her body, but when she wakes up, she's got Bear dead in her lap. Their two friends' dead bodies are also in the house. There's nothing but carnage surrounding her. Am I supposed to feel some sort of catharsis that she was the one person who was able to survive in the end? Free to do what? Live with the long-lasting trauma from this experience? With little to no family or friends to be available as a support system during her recovery? I know I've been harsh in my assessment of this material in the spoiler section, thus it might seem odd that I would slightly tilt the film in the direction of a positive rating rather than a negative one, but I will reiterate that the filmmaking techniques of how the scares themselves are put together were highly effective and done well. If the aim of the film is to give the audience an adrenaline rush, this roller coaster thrill that many horror fans associate with the fun of the genre, Obsession is effective, and I can't deny that. What it's aiming to do, be scary, that is well fulfilled, which is why if I'm going to score the film on how well it's been made, I do have to give it those points, even though when I get into the deeper analysis of themes, of how the story can relate to various cultural topics and issues, I struggle to enjoy it. If you are not squeamish about a woman being held hostage within the context of a supernatural horror premise, you should be perfectly fine to watch this film and mostly enjoy the adrenaline rush of the scares. Final thoughts. Inde Navarrette, book her for more jobs and give her those Willem Dafoe jobs. Let her play more creatures because she was phenomenal in this. If you feel like the film might be too overwhelming to watch in full, that's perfectly fine, but wait for the theatrical run to wrap and wait for the scene packs to be edited together by fans of her best bits because she carried this movie more often than not.